Are you preparing for the GMAT or planning to start your preparation soon? If so, you should know that it is essential that you first take exam simulation, a mock test. Now, for those of you who have already taken a mock test, you might be asking yourself why you got such a low score in the exam. After all, you might feel that you're doing okay with your foundations, right? That your grammatical knowledge is on point, or that your quantitative foundations are okay also. But you still managed to get a low score. Why? In this video, we're going to learn the main cause, the most common reason why people get a low score in the exam and how to quickly fix it. Alright, just to make a little outline, there are three main reasons why you might get a low score in the exam. We're going to go over each of those reasons, but we're only going to focus on the last one, which is the most important. The first reason why you might get a low score in the exam would be a lack of proper theoretical knowledge. Of course, if you don't know the concepts that are being tested, then you're going to get a low score. For example, if in verbal, you don't know how to read proper English, or you don't know your grammatical foundations for sentence correction, you're going to get a low score. No doubt about it, right? So the same way in quant, if you don't know how to do your basic operations, for example, arithmetic operations, or for example, if you don't know your geometrical rules, properties of triangles, etc., you are going to get a low score. But you shouldn't worry too much about it though. Why? Because if you have the right program, and if you hire the right tutor, then you should have all this information by the end of the preparation. It's part of the preparation itself, right? So they will give you all the knowledge you need in order to cover these aspects. So we don't worry too much about it. The second reason why you might get a low score is a very important reason. Okay, psychological issues. This is a huge topic and I would need more time in order to talk about it. Probably we're going to do this in a series of videos later on. But just to be brief, you have to understand that all these psychological issues while taking the exam, they only affect one aspect, one very crucial aspect, okay? Which is time management. So when you get, for example, frustrated when you are taking the test, when you are taking the exam, that affects the way in which you allocate time to different questions. All right. So, for example, you feel frustrated, you might feel that you are competing with a question. So you are going to try to solve it no matter how long it's going to take you. So in that way, you compromise all the questions. All right. That's an example only, but there are several aspects of psychological issues. So just to be brief here, my main point of advice here would be don't get emotional when you're taking the exam. All right. Don't get emotional. Keep yourself together, keep collected, keep calm, keep cool. Always keep a poker face, always, all right? And one of the most important things is also always think on the margin, right? So when you are giving more time to solving a question, for example, always think if that's going to help you in the long run. If by doing so you don't compromise the questions that are coming later on. And the topic of this video, which is the third reason why people get a low score, is a lack of knowledge of the exam's mechanics. We have to understand how the GMAT works, right? You have to understand how the algorithm that is behind the GMAT works, how it grades you, how it gives you more points, how it rewards you when you do something correctly, and when it penalizes you and takes points away from you. Okay? In order to do this, first you have to understand that the GMAT is a CAT exam. When you start answering questions correctly, they'll give you harder and harder questions. And if you answer them correctly, you're going to get a high score. If you answer the questions incorrectly though, they'll give you easier questions, but in that way you're only going to have access to the lower scores. Okay, so if you want to have a high score, you want to make sure that you answer several intermediate and difficult questions right. So there are 3 pointers of advice here in order for you to avoid having a bad score or getting a low score because of this algorithm. The first pointer of advice would be make a good first impression. All right, treat the GMAT as if it were a person. All right, you always want to make a good first impression, right? So make a good first impression on the GMAT. The exam uses a little sample, all right, of the first 6 or 7 questions in order to gauge your level. So if you get too many of those first 6 or 7 questions incorrect, the exam is going to interpret that you don't know anything. So how do you avoid being graded low by the GMAT in those first questions? Of course, you have to give or spend a little bit more time solving those questions. When I say a little bit more time, I'm talking about 20 or 30% more time. Do not exaggerate, all right? because if you spend too much time, you're going to compromise the other questions that are coming later on. Pointer of advice number 2 would be you want to avoid having back-to-back questions answered incorrect. All right, you want to avoid a series of incorrect questions, because if you do so, the GMAT will penalize you more heavily than they would if you had these incorrect answers spread out. Okay, so this is very important also for those who want to skip questions, right? If you are having problems, for example, with time management, your tutor will recommend that you skip some questions in the exam. But you never want to skip a question if the previous question was answered incorrect. Following this reasoning, we almost never recommend that a student skips a whole reading comprehension passage, because if you do so, what's going to happen is that you're going to run the risk of having 3 questions in a row incorrect, and that's going to be catastrophic for your score. All right. So basically, if you do that, if you have 3 questions in a row incorrect, basically that's the end of the exam. You're never getting back from that one. So just avoid having these back-to-back questions incorrect at all times. Pointer of advice number 3 is that you have to finish the exam. You have to answer all the questions. Do not leave any question unanswered. That's very important, all right? If you leave questions unanswered, the exam is going to take a lot of points away from you, all right? So if you're running out of time, just click on any answer, all right? Just guess. Try to make an educated guess, but if you can't, just click on any answer. So these have been the points of advice for you to follow in your next simulation. Alright, you don't have to do anything new, you just have to avoid these situations and you are instantly gonna see a better result, a better score. Okay, if you found this video useful, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, because we're gonna be putting more content later on.